Alright, I am back with a Cyberpunk 2077 video. It's almost hard to say that with a straight face because I have not been doing a lot of updates on the game because there are not a lot of updates with the game. But I have been inspired to do this latest video because of a really bizarre kind of investor presentation that CDPR did this past week. And also kind of just a state of like where we are after 6 months and where we're going or where we're not going, because this is just the situation that keeps on giving in terms of how kind of absurd it is. In terms of the actual game, there is almost nothing to report. They have had a bunch of two major patches really, and then a bunch of hotfixes, and those have mostly been about kind of stomping out very specific quest bugs and improving performance on certain machines. The game still does not run well on its most problematic platforms. PlayStation 4 original and Xbox One. Xbox One, I think, is the worst baseline metric for the game, where I think the best console version is the PS5, which is running the PS4 Pro version. All of these patches have not made Sony let Cyberpunk back on the PlayStation Store, where it has been banned since about a week after launch, so pretty much 6 months at this point. And there is no indication about when or if it will be coming back, and we're getting close to a couple months from now. Allegedly, we are going to see the release of the PS5 and Xbox Series X next-gen versions, so it might not ever come back. They might just release the PS5 version, but it's not clear what bar that the game needs to hit to make it back onto the store. In terms of actual gameplay, just very, very little has changed. They've done some like tuning to police response and things like that, where the police won't instantly spawn in front of you, but it's not, they haven't like patched in a GTA police system or anything. Like they're teleporting. They're just not showing up 4 feet in front of you. They're showing up like 20 feet ahead of you or something like that. They've done minor things like, the car icons are now car icons instead of quest icons, which is confusing. And there's more like crafting blueprints for legendary clothing and things like that. But it's just like, in terms of, if you've just been playing the game, there is very, very little difference, other than maybe it runs better on whatever platform you're using, but that's about it. In terms of where we are kind of in the state of the series, we got a pretty clear picture of that with this investor report, where CDPR was doing everything humanly possible to avoid actually talking about like the state of the game's sales and its upcoming content and stuff. We'll just start with the sales, where they did not give any sales numbers. They refused to give specific sales numbers for all of Q1. An analyst asked them if he had an estimate using his own sort of calculations that he uses for the industry, that it had sold 800,000 copies in all of Q1. That would be as opposed to 13.7 million copies it sold in 3 weeks in December. And the CDPR was like, no, that's not quite right, but they didn't give an alternative figure. But they did acknowledge that they have not sold any new retail units. All the retail units that are being sold, like the physical units, are still from what they sold last year. So those have not sold out, and then they have not sold the stores more copies. So no physical units were sold. It has not been on the PlayStation Store, so it has not been accessible to 150 million PS4 players or anyone who owns a PS5 for the entire quarter. So the only sales would be Xbox, PC, or Stadia digital copies. And Stadia doesn't even count, obviously. I mean, it's minimal. And they said the majority is on PC, and from the start the majority was on PC. But that suddenly makes that 800,000 figure not seem all that implausible, when there are apparently no physical sales and the entire platform of PlayStation has been wiped out. And that would be enough for like a game that didn't have all sorts of disastrous problems and this terrible PR kind of quagmire it's caught in. But obviously, kind of the state of the game and the buzz around the game being so negative drove sales down even further, something that like CDPR has said in the past, that PlayStation removing it from the store kind of sent a signal about the quality of the game that would depress sales on other platforms, not just PlayStation. So that's where sales are at. Not great. And then they released a couple of very fun charts here. The first one is fun. It's just a graph that shows the crash rates of the game decreasing over time with different patches. It shows a spike right after each patch, and then it goes down, and it is down by the end. The problem is there's no y-axis, and we do not know what the rate has gone from. You would assume the bottom line is 0. Who knows? It might not be. You see graphs all the time that don't have The bottom is 0. This could be an 80% crash rate going to a 40% crash rate, or a 2% crash rate going to a 1% crash rate. We don't know because there are no numbers, so we don't know what the crash rate of this game originally was at. Obviously, the game also had many, many problems that didn't involve, like, literally the game crashing. There were, countless technical problems that weren't outright crashes, but were bugged missions or poor performance and things like that. So even if this had numbers, I think that's only kind of illustrating a fraction of the amount of technical problems the game has. And then my favorite thing they showed off is their new roadmap. And by new roadmap, I mean their old roadmap with less information on it. The original roadmap they had was already, like, comically light on information. Most games that are planning updates in the future will have, like, specific dates and timelines and, like, deadlines and kind of details about what their content is that's coming up. And, like, Cyberpunk isn't a live service game, no, but it has all these updates coming, and it has free DLC, and it has next-gen versions, and it has paid DLC. Literally the only thing on this chart is the past patches and hotfixes that have gone up, which no need to highlight those because they already happened, and it's not really a roadmap if things happen in the past. And then the entirety of the roadmap is just a list of free DLC coming and PS5 and Xbox Series X versions coming in the second half of the year. I'm not sure if they're now saying both of those are happening in the second half of the year. The old roadmap at least seemed to indicate that the free DLC was coming in the first half of the year, but we are now in the last month of the first half of the year and nothing has been talked about. So we have no idea. Again, that is not going to be like huge DLC even. This is supposed to be like a lot of cosmetic stuff, maybe some shorter gig missions. Like it is supposed to be kind of on the scale of The Witcher 3. And as they helpfully point out, it even says small DLC or small free content with an asterisk in this chart. And then just improvements and fixes or whatever it says, multiple patches and updates. And like, it's literally nothing. There is nothing on this roadmap that is concrete in any capacity, which is just so ridiculous to see. And we have gotten, we don't have any idea when the next big patch is coming. We don't know when free DLC is coming. And the optimisms of the community that are left, the optimists are saying that, like, they just have their heads down and they're just working. But I do not think that they are going in full Hello Games mode. Reportedly, I think Tom Warren said this from The Verge, that there are still 300 people working on Cyberpunk, which means everyone else, I forget how big CDPR is, I can look it up, but it's significantly more than that. That means all of those people are still doing bug fixes, but those are also the people working on free DLC and paid DLC and the next gen updates. And all of that kind of adds up to be like, that's not a ton of people, I guess, working on it. Like, in terms of like a game that needs to be kind of transformed at a base level in certain aspects, like that, taking that many people off of it to go work on whatever is next, Witcher 4, I don't know what they're doing, seems not ideal. But they maintain, like, literally it says on the roadmap, like, this is our plan for long-term success, and they want to have a big turnaround story for this. But so far they've given no signs of the type of turnaround that you would want to see from this game as happening, and when we can expect that happening. It has been patch and patch and patch and patch, and it is still not running well enough on last-gen consoles to be good enough for Sony. It's still not a great experience there. I think it's perfectly passable on like higher-end consoles now, and obviously PC, but that's a more narrow kind of array of the player population. And then, we were, by this point in The Witcher 3's life cycle, like, Blood and Stone was already out. So, like, we are way behind their normal schedule of, like, when to expect additional content from these games. And Cyberpunk paid DLC will likely not be out until 2022, which means it will not be out in any size until a year after the game is out, which puts it like way, way off schedule of how they did The Witcher in the past. And as you remember, The Witcher 3 launched with a lot of technical problems too, and was in a very bad state at launch. But this is kind of another level, and almost 7 months later now, we still have very, very, little information about what's coming and when. And the only real improvements to the game have been like specific bug fixes, unbreaking quests, and performance fixes. So it's essentially like finishing the game. And it's still not even, every time they post a patch, you'll have 1,000 people posting the bugs and glitches they're still getting. So they're endless, seemingly. So that's where we are. And if I'm not talking about this game that much anymore, this is why, because they have given us so few updates. Maybe they're going to announce free DLC at E3 or something. I don't know what their plan is for E3, if they're even having a presence there. But a lot of people are announcing things around this window, so if they're going to announce anything about a date for the next gen versions or when free DLC is coming, it would be about that time to do that now. So that's where we are. We've never been in a great place, obviously, but nothing really has changed in 6 or 7 months now, and it is kind of wild to see that on a game this high profile with a developer that was this beloved previous to this. So I'm fascinated by the story. It's why I do continue to cover it, even though a lot of people aren't. And I am looking forward to anything to get me back into playing actual new content in the game again, just to try it out. Because there are so many base fundamentals about the game I do like, and this whole mess has just been kind of very unfortunate. So that's where we are, and now it's back to Destiny and my usual stuff there. So, all right, I'll see you guys next time. Take care.